Yes, I'll start with the news center. And since it's the news review, let me start with a story related to the news review. ICU calls on the government to intervene in daily graphic Ghanaian Times financial woes. Yes, these days I hardly see the daily graphic or the Ghanaian Times. And ICU is asking the government to intervene in the daily graphic and the Ghanaian Times financial woes. They're also asking the government to invest in New Plan Ghana and also look at reinvesting in PBC, because at the point PBC are 30,000 workers, now they have 1,000 workers. And New Plan, that the government should invest in New Plan to produce more buses and electric buses to enable transportation within the country. Now, other stories on the News Center front page. The MTN Heroes of Change Season 7 is showcasing Ghanaians transforming communities. The details of the nominees are here. You can check them out on the front page of the News Center. Smartphone Assembly holds Golden Promise for Ghana. This is the MTN Ghana CEO. You know the issues to do with some countries, was it Indonesia or something, asking Apple to invest in production locally, or they slap more taxes and tariffs, which has forced Apple to plan a $1 billion investment in that market. Stephen Blewett says that Smartphone Assembly holds Golden Promise for Ghana. We should be looking at that. And the two big stories: electricity, 352% hike in 16 years. Fresh 14.75% hike takes effect May 3. But for how long can consumers bear the pain? This is the News Center. How long can consumers bear the pain?
I think that for me, it's about letting the quarterly adjustment thing work. I stand to be educated. What happened last year? So if we don't stick to that quarterly review, then consumers will always be hit with a huge increment in these tariffs. And I think it's very, very critical, whether for political expediency or being an election year and all the rest. Let's stick to these tariff adjustments every quarter.
Do you think these new tariffs are fair on consumers and also fair on the utility companies?
Well, but on the bit about the utility companies, I think that we still have to push them hard to deal with the inefficiencies and the waste in the system, where they produce X amount of power and just why it gets to us, and who takes care of that waste or excess or the inability of a portion of that power to get to us. I think it's very, very critical. I think could you raise the point about the IMF program? I think that what an IMF program is doing for all of us is to tell us that these are the things that you are supposed to do. So they are just reminding us to do it. So sometimes we are quick to, for some government persons, it's not as the IMF. When you run a sector that people are not paying what they call realistic tariffs, and also not dealing with inefficiencies and debts build up. See, it is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Government will come in to subsidize you. Again, will be forced to come with some taxes to get from you. So, because if it's subsidized for you now, you indirectly pay for that thing. And it's power that you consume.
So considering the fact that utilities constitute about 10 to 12% of the average person's monthly spend, you think Ghanaians now are in a position to really absorb this 14.7%?
I think it'll be a tough one. But also let us not forget the connection here. One of the main variables that impact the review is inflation and the exchange rate. So then there is pressure on government to ensure that stabilize the Ghana cedi, reduce inflation. If those things are done, these hikes might be minimized a little bit. So there's a role that government has to play to ensure that I don't end up paying these huge hikes in tariffs, whilst looking at the fact that I'm paying for what I consume. It's not what someone is consuming.
Let me bring you more stories from the News Center. Feed Ghana launched to boost national food security. This happened over the weekend in Techiman, and the government of Ghana has launched the Feed Ghana project. The president launched that. The program is a major government flagship intervention aimed at revitalizing Ghana's agri sector and ensuring national food security. We are told that this program is expected to modernize farming practices and empower farmers with the tools needed for success. Now, a special component of the program known as Yedua Yeridia will focus on reducing the country's dependence on vegetable imports by promoting the local cultivation of tomatoes, onion, peppers, and other vegetables. There's a bit to do with urban and peri-urban agric, greenhouse farming, and backyard gardening, which will all be promoted as part of this initiative. There's also the big number on oil palm production. The president said that we need 450,000 metric tons of oil palm every year, but we produce only 300,000 metric tons. So there is a deficit of 150,000 metric tons, which we need to be able to produce locally. And then there is the Nkokɔ, Nkitinkiti, and the poultry component. Another significant project under the program is Nkokɔ, Nkitinkiti, a poultry revitalization initiative that aims to restore Ghana's poultry industry by improving breeding, feed production, and marketing. The program would focus on promoting the production of specific staples such as maize, rice, soybeans, sorghum, cassava, yam, and plantain, as well as key vegetables. Now, on the poultry, the president mentioned some 50 anchor farmers will be supported to produce 4 million birds, and about 55,000 households will be supported to produce about 500 birds per household. If you put all these numbers together, we are looking at a little over 30 million birds for the country.
I mean, look, I get the idea of, sort of democratizing the production of poultry, right? But in other parts of the world, they don't have to. They don't have to incentivize households to provide enough chicken for their what's it called?
People,
for their population. So I always wonder about Ghana, right? We have poultry farmers. Why? What is the reason why we are unable to produce enough poultry for our population?
You need the inputs, day-old chicks. You need to have capacity to have grandparent birds and parent birds who would lay fertilized eggs that will be hatchable, and you need to have capacity to hatch them here.
That's what the poultry farmers are doing.
If you are going to do, we don't have that capacity to produce all the day-old chicks
Why
we
not?
need. If you are going to do like 30 million birds, for example, you need 30 million plus some extra because there will be mortalities and all that. So we need to be able to produce that here, the day-old chicks. Beyond that, you need the infrastructure to support the poultry. You need housing, electricity, water. You need labor. And then, importantly, you need feed. You need a lot of maize, a lot of soya, a lot of wheat bran, rice bran. You need millets. Professor Kambon says that, look, based on this research, millet is one of the alternatives we could look at. So you need feed and you need the processing. And then you also need your vaccines and other biosecurity and animal health related stuff. So it's a lot of things that come together to make you self-sufficient for poultry.
I am still not clear about why we are unable to produce these things, provide these things in Ghana. I think maybe we should spend some time.
Yes, we have some numbers on that. We can break it down.
Yeah. Before we do the paper, I think that there's very interesting development happening. I mean, this morning, the news about the Goldfields decision to bring its operations in the diamond mines to an end because government has not granted their request to extend the lease. Interesting developments there, what it means for the staff going forward. But also we are picking up that decision was taken quite a long time, that they want to actually end that operation and possibly look at a situation where they bring in other partners.
That Goldfields want to end the operation, or the
government
government
of like trying to know, as in the mine trying to bring another partner on board in terms of operating that space. So that decision, I mean, what we're picking up is that it wasn't that, it took government to actually end. I think that is why they are backing up. But it is just not taking long ago to bring another partner on board. As to whether it is good to bring in an external partner or look at a local partner. Government on its part is also arguing that a step has to be taken to ensure that Ghanaians own significant stake in these mining firms. And for me, I think it's a very, very, very interesting development that we are all following to see what happens next in terms of how do you ensure that whilst the company is no longer going ahead with their diamond mines, what happens to the stakeholders, the workers and all those things, and how government is also planning to make sure that this becomes a smooth one with all the disruptions that may come with this decision going forward. And with the company trying to seize the operations, are they going to demobilize all the equipment? I mean, from the memo that we cited, that means that they are taking steps to wind down operation as we speak right now. But also not loosen out on the key part about the bit that they are still in engagement with government. But if you engage with persons within government, it appears that they are firm on the decision not to renew the lease.
It will not be renewed.
And that they feel that there's an opportunity to bring in other indigenous firms collectively to own a critical stake.
Does this have any impact on the tackle operations? Or
No.
This is just dam mining?
No, this is just the dam mine operations.
Okay.
And you know how Goldfields has been doing so well with the mine operations in Ghana yet.
Yeah.
For me, the argument is how should this be done in a smooth manner to ensure that we minimize the expected shocks to the sector and then the economy.
Well, can I bring more stories? Okay, so more stories from the newspapers. There's this story to do with a man who has been killed and burnt in Binduri over the weekend. It was all over on Facebook, and it's linked to the Boko conflict. If you check the Ghanaian publisher, Boko conflict haunts Mahama, minority demands urgent action. And there are other stories all around online and also in the newspapers about the Boko conflict.
Let me do the Economy Times. It has government snubs high treasury bills with demands despite heavy debt refining needs. Basically, there's a story about the fact that the investors are shifting to the Bank of Ghana bills because it has a better returns to investors compared to the treasury bills. The U.S. tariff war, African exporters react to the AFT gears up for a subdued impact. BOG cautions commercial banks as they adjust the lending rates. And today has a story. Mahama moves to boost food production as he launches the Feed Ghana program. Allow Ashantahene to resolve the Boko conflict. And the finder, its tariffs up May 3. Fetch major currencies strengthen against the US dollar, maybe including the Ghana cedi. Of course, and President unhappy about the $400 million annual chicken import. So
I read an article on how Canada, Germany, and other countries who have bought American bonds are using that as the silent bargaining chip to get Trump to backtrack on the tariffs. And if you read the analysis, if these countries decide to do what they want to do, if Trump continues with the tariffs and the threats, it's really going to affect the U.S. currency, the U.S. economy in general, because America is borrowing from them for their to run the country. It's interesting. We should be looking closely at that and how that will also affect our currency locally.
It's interesting. I mean, for what is happening to the dollar, for me, it's good for the Ghana cedi. I mean, if you have to do any transaction in FX, and sometimes the amount of Ghana cedis you have to cough. And for the businesses, their main argument has always been that, see, the volatility. And at least for the first time in a while, and I stand to educate, we've seen the Ghana cedi being fairly stable against the US dollar for quite a long time. I mean, you check the trading platforms on Bloomberg, you check with the Forex Bureau operators and the commercial banks. Sometimes it's like, see, they don't fall kakra. Because the rates are just not changing.
We like it like that. Now, a final story from me. Education Minister to present scholarship bill to Parliament. So we are going to have the Ghana Scholarship Authority Bill presented to Parliament when it reconvenes in May.